We are back for our final video in this 4-part video series. Today we learned how to properly set sag for the street and racetrack. We're also going to look at how changing your street tires to race slicks affect the overall geometry and handling of your bike. And to finish, we go one-on-one with Motor America Pro BMW racer Travis Wyman. Finding the baseline settings for sag on your BMW is easy as opening your rider's manual and going to page 100 under Spring Preload. Here you will find a how-to on setting up factory recommended sag settings on your bike for the street and racetrack when using DDC suspension. But today you don't have to open up your rider's manual to learn how to do this. We're going to show you how. So why do we set up rider sag, and why does it vary from street to track? We utilize sag as a starting point to obtain chassis balance with rider and gear for the conditions you'll be riding in, because not everyone is the same weight, nor do they carry the same gear. Typically for the street, we soften the suspension using higher sag numbers, meaning the bike will sit lower in the stroke. This is because the load factors aren't as great as those on the track. Even on a spirited canyon ride, we don't see the same amount of applied force, speed, or braking that you'll have on the racetrack, though there are some exceptions. For the racetrack, we stiffen up the suspension using lower sag numbers, meaning the bike will sit higher in the stroke. This is because of greater applied forces due to higher speeds, heavier braking, higher corner speeds, and off-corner acceleration. This also takes into account the use of slicks or DOT race tires that are brought up to operating temperatures while circulating the track that allow the rider to safely push the limitations of traction. Many factors apply, but the bottom line takeaway is we are looking for overall chassis balance. This will also help us identify if the bike is too lightly sprung or too heavily sprung, requiring a spring change. So let's set up your bike. First, we're going to remove any preload currently on the front and rear spring. Starting with the forks, using a 13mm socket and appropriate extension, we're going to turn the preload adjuster counterclockwise until it stops. This is considered full out or zero preload at the preload adjuster. We then move to the shock. Using a 13mm socket and appropriate extension, we're going to turn the preload adjuster counterclockwise until it stops. This is considered full out or zero preload at the preload adjuster. We can then lift the motorcycle using an engine jack or stand so that the bike is completely off the ground. We will be using a lower triple tree stand for the front and a pillion stands for the rear. In preparation for our measurements, we will identify exactly where the measurements will be made. For the front suspension, our starting measurement will be at the edge of the dust seal, ending at the edge of the fork tube and front axle. Moving to the rear shock, we're going to measure the distance from a vertical point on the cowling to the axle. I like to use my tape measure as a pendulum to obtain a vertical line between the axle and corresponding point on the rear cowling. I then mark the point at which I plan to measure using a piece of tape and a pen. We are now ready to measure the static values of our suspension, starting from the edge of the dust seal, ending at the edge of the fork tube and front axle. Ours measures 120mm. Write this measurement down as we will compare it to the loaded value with rider and full gear. Next, we measure the rear suspension, starting from our identified location on the rear cowling to the rear axle. Ours measures 642mm. Again, write this value down for later reference. If we are preparing the bike for the racetrack, the rider needs to be fully geared up in leathers, boots, gloves, and helmet, as we want the most accuracy when identifying the loaded value of the rider. The same goes for the street, with the rider fully geared up and any baggage he or she might be carrying on a regular basis. Your rider's manual describes loading the rider on the bike and taking a single measurement to identify sag value. I personally like to take it one step further by taking two measurements. One after pushing down on the bike and allowing it to recover, and another after lifting up on the suspension and allowing it to recover. I then average the difference between the two. This is due to mechanical stiction and seal stiction. By obtaining an average, we split the difference between the two characteristics for even more precise values. Now that we're prepared to take our loaded measurement with rider and gear, we're going to turn on the ignition of our dynamic damping controlled bike, as this is the only way to activate the electronically controlled valves. For non-DDC or standard suspension, it is not necessary to turn on the ignition. The spotter will then support the motorcycle, only assisting the rider with the balance of the chassis, not putting any downward pressure on the suspension. The rider will then place both feet on the pegs and assume the riding position. I suggest when setting the bike up for the racetrack, the rider be tucked behind the windscreen. And when setting it up for the road, the rider be seated upright. This is because the typical riding position for the track is leaning forward in an attack position, whereas the typical position for a road ride is more upright. This will help in providing proper chassis balance for the riding you will be doing. Starting with the front, we're going to take two measurements. The first will be taken after pushing down on the front of the motorcycle and allowing it to recover slowly. Our ending measurement is 75 millimeters. Write this number down. The second will be taken after lifting the front up and allowing it to settle slowly. Ours is 77 millimeters. We now see there is a difference in the two values. Once again, this is caused by seal and mechanical stiction. Your spring sag will fall in the middle of these two measurements. So a quick calculation. We add measurements 1 and 2. Ours is 152 millimeters. We then divide by 2. Ours is 76 millimeters. Subtract this value from the overall length of 120 millimeters and we get 44 millimeters. This value is your loaded sag. Our BMW Rider's Manual provides us with a starting sag value on the forks of 40 millimeters plus or minus 2. So we get a range of 38 to 42 millimeters. For the racetrack, we will want to shoot for the lower sag values of 38 millimeters, making the bike stiffer, and for the street, higher sag values of 42 millimeters, making the bike softer. We will adjust the sag using the preload adjuster. Clockwise will always stiffen the front suspension, therefore reducing your sag number, and counterclockwise will soften the suspension, increasing your sag. So if your ending sag number is 45 millimeters and you're setting the bike up for the track, you will need to stiffen the front suspension by turning the preload adjuster clockwise while remeasuring until you reach the sag value of 38 millimeters. If you're unable to reach the values provided using your preload adjuster, you may need to change the springs. Moving to the rear shock, we're going to take two measurements. The first will be taken after pushing down on the rear of the motorcycle and allowing it to recover slowly. Our ending measurement is 600 millimeters. Write this number down. The second will be taken after lifting the rear of the motorcycle up and allowing it to settle slowly. Ours is 602 millimeters. We now see there's a difference in the two values. Once again, this is caused by seal and mechanical stiction. Your spring sag will fall in the middle of these two measurements. So a quick calculation. Add measurements 1 and 2. Ours equals 1,202 millimeters. Then divide by 2. Ours is 601 millimeters. Subtract this value from our overall length of 642 millimeters and we get 41 millimeters. This value is your loaded sag. Our BMW Rider's Manual provides us with a starting sag value on the shock of 35 millimeters plus or minus 2 for the road and 30 millimeters plus or minus 2 for the track. We will adjust the sag using the preload adjuster. Clockwise will stiffen the rear suspension, therefore reducing your sag number, and counterclockwise will soften the suspension, increasing your sag number. So if your ending sag number is 35 millimeters and you're setting the bike up for the track, you will need to stiffen the rear suspension by turning the preload adjuster clockwise and remeasuring until you reach the track sag value of 30 millimeters. If you're unable to reach the values provided using your preload adjuster, you may need to change the spring rates. I want to draw your attention to the fact that there is no perfect sag number out there that is going to give you that perfect chassis balance for every track or road condition. The process of setting rider sag is to give you a balanced chassis as a starting point. You will then work toward getting the proper support that works for you on the track or road you'll be riding and the speed you'll be riding it at. So if you ask your local pro racer what sag numbers he's running, he will probably tell you he has no idea, or he doesn't use sag at all. This is because his bike has been set up specific to the track he is riding or racing, which leads us to the tires. The tires you choose for the street and track will have a profound effect on the handling of your motorcycle. I want to show you why this is utilizing a chassis program that will help us identify what going from a DOT tire to a slick will do to the overall geometry of your bike. We're going to build out two chassis. For this example, we will use a Metzeler RRK3, which many BMW S1000RRs are delivered with, versus the Diablo Superbike Slick. The chassis build-outs are identical with the exception of the tires. And although we won't get into carcass deflection or profile lips for either tire, it does make a huge difference in the handling characteristics of your motorcycle. For this example, we will only be using the center radius of the tires. When we look at the front tire center radius of the Metzeler RRK3 versus the Diablo Superbike Slick, we see the Metzeler is taller by 1 millimeter. When looking at the rear tire, we see the Diablo Superbike Slick is substantially taller by 2 millimeters at 336 millimeters versus 334 millimeters. Let's see what this equates to on the stock chassis of our bike. Without going too deep down the rabbit hole, we will look at 3 parameters: rake, ground trail, and swing arm angle. We immediately see that the overall profile of the Pirelli Superbike Slick tire produces less rake at 23.56 degrees, less trail by over a millimeter at 100.8 versus 102 of the Metzler, and a lower swing arm angle at 12.43 degrees. If no change is made to the chassis when going to the Pirelli Superbike Slick, you'll find the bike will not be as stable due to the lack of trail, somewhat edgy and potentially twitchy. So what do we need to change in order to get our trail back and the stability in the chassis? We need to change the overall ride height of our forks and shock. Starting with the forks, you'll need to raise the front of the bike 5 millimeters so that only 1 millimeter fork tube is showing above the triple clamp. Moving to the shock, we find that it need only be lowered a half a millimeter by reducing our link arm length from 87.5 to 87, or reducing the gap to 9 millimeters from 9.5. Our ending chassis values produce nearly the same ground trail and same swing arm angle as our Metzler setup, with a slight exception of a touch more rake. Making these changes will produce a very similar feel to your Metzler setup, with an increase in bike flickability due to the higher center of gravity. Also keep in mind the tire profile of the Pirelli Superbike Slick is more aggressive, which aids in quicker transitions into and out of the corners. So there you have it, a starting chassis geometry for the World Superbike Pirelli Slick, 125/70/17 front and a 265/17 rear. Moving on. Let's check in on Travis Wyman and see how his preparation for his assault on the Stock 1000 class and Superbike Cup with Moto America is going.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. Today we have 2 special guests. We're very excited to have them here. Let's jump right into it. We have Travis Wyman, Moto America BMW professional racer, and BMW race support engineer, Steve Weir. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us here today. How you guys doing?
Yeah, good.
Good. Awesome.
Happy to be in.
Good. Thanks, Moses. Appreciate this.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. So let's start with last season. Travis, this first question will be for you. Last season. So last season you were on the brand new BMW S1000RR. Tell us how it went. How did it go?
So the end results of 2nd and 3rd place in the championships don't really highlight how difficult and challenging the year for us was. I mean, when we hopped on the bike, I knew it had some great potential, and working with Steve, I knew that he was capable of doing great things for me because we've been successful before and we've been looking forward to the new bike forever, but it didn't come without a lot of challenges. We didn't really have anyone to feed off of. We were the only ones racing the new platform BMW, so we didn't have anyone to collect data from as starting points and things like that. So every time we showed up to the track, it was kind of like a fresh start for us. The year started off pretty tricky for me personally because I hadn't been on track in almost 8 months. So my first time on that motorcycle on the new bike was actually first practice of the first round of Road America. And then after that, I ended up breaking my arm in a training accident mountain biking. So the second round, I was racing with a broken arm, and we had some technical difficulties along the way, some success along the way. We ended up with a race victory at Indianapolis and another podium at Pittsburgh. And in the end, it's actually kind of shocking to see how high we finished in the results based on all the challenges we faced. But overall, I think it was a really successful effort, and it's proven so far in 2021. So
awesome. Steve, how was it for you the previous season, working on a brand new platform and trying to get Travis up to speed?
Yeah, just kind of repeating what Travis said, it was extremely difficult. We had 0 track time. We didn't go test anywhere, and brand new chassis, brand new electronics. I hadn't even built, maps for this bike, nor would we even worked with the geometry of the bike. So we came in so green. But what we found really quick was how good the bike really was. We did definitely ran into some pitfalls on the way.
some issues that we didn't know were going to arise with the bike, or we would have been prepared for it. And then just really coming up with proper suspension setup, proper engine braking characteristics, traction control settings, all these things we were developing along the route the whole year. So boy, sometimes we nailed it and sometimes we didn't. And sometimes it seemed like we were chasing our tail, but what was good about it is it was all for the preparation for this season, the start of the season. And that first race this season just really kicked off how much we had put into the bike, and Travis this season too, he was healthy. He came in, not all broken up. I mean, it was, I'll never forget, the call that I got from Travis saying, hey, I broke my arm, but it's not that bad.
Oh man,
I should be able to ride. And I'm like, what does that just mean? So we fast forward, I show up at the track and I'm like, well, let me take a look at your arm. And he pulls this thing out. And I was like, I remember just going, oh my God, it was so swollen. He goes, oh, it's way better than it was. And I'm like, we're going to do this, and that's how it got started. And then he had it repaired and we had to deal with that for the next race. Cause it was, fresh off an operation. And I was super surprised that they even allowed him to compete. And then coming into Pittsburgh, he was doing better, but the arm was swelling up really bad. And his performance that year for me, just seeing that and what we had to go through really blew my mind. And it was amazing that, Travis can ride, man. And I just got to be able to give him a package he can ride and make him comfortable. And the guy goes. And yeah, that's pretty much it in a handbasket.
Yeah, man, no, it's great because I do remember seeing you guys, and I remember seeing Travis hurting just a tad bit when I was watching one of the races, but to be able to accomplish what he did, and it's just amazing. So it gives it all, to the skill level that Travis has, and also like the team effort, to be able to accomplish what you guys accomplished last year. So it's amazing, guys. It was great. So moving forward to 2021, right? You guys just finished your first race. There's a lot of amazing things that happened, but I'd like for you guys to tell us what some of those things are, because it's very exciting coming into your first race and having this kind of opener. So Travis, you want to start with us? Just tell us a little bit about the 2021 season and how it's going.
Yeah, so I've been so busy since we left the track that I don't think it's actually like set in yet. My work ethic, my training is definitely at the same level it was. I know I have a target on my back now because we're leaving Road Atlanta with the points lead in both classes, new lap record, and I'm the guy setting the bar at the moment. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think we're off to an extremely good start. Came away with a third place in the first stock race, winning the second stock race, and then 7th and 8th place in superbike and first place points in the superbike cup for both of those classes. So pretty surreal feeling at this point, but I owe it all to the preparation leading up to that race. I was on the bike the 2 weekends before. I was dragging my guys around California, and even my crew guy, Alex from Texas, he put a ton of miles on his truck and trailer and put the effort in so that we could test and race and be ready. I mean, we showed up at first practice, and after that session, we were a second faster than the whole field. Like, I've never been more prepared for a season, and I owe it to my guys for making that happen. Really.
It's awesome.
So it's still like, it's surreal. Like I've talked about this over and over, and this is like my third podcast in 3 days, and it's super exciting. I love sharing this, but even just saying it hasn't set in yet. And I'm really looking forward to the next round and continuing this, success we've had so far.
Awesome. And Steven, in the engineering department, how did it go? First race, learning what you guys learned last year, and to this year, are there any different preparations that you guys did to make sure that Travis was up to speed?
I would say, we had a chance to actually go test at some races, and we've never raced at multiple races before showing up to Motor America. It just always seems like we maybe get one race round in, and then boom, we're right in the thick of it and wanting Travis to go fast. And this year we start off at Chuckwalla, and I wanted to turn the bike upside down, basically. I want to change the chassis. I wanted to run the chassis. I want to see how steep of a swing arm angle we could run before it pushes back. I want to see how flat we could make the chassis before it pushed back. Playing with some traction control settings and recovery rates of the bike and all that. Well, first it was a brutal day for Travis on the Saturday when I did all this, you know, and the results weren't showing in the races. But I kept telling him, like, hey, we're here to collect data. You know, the big picture is we're gonna show up at Motor America ready to do, you know, to do the business. And that's exactly what we did. You know, the guy went out and rode his heart out, and I made the bike as ugly as I could make it in either direction in hopes to maybe find something, or if there was something that would help us recover for ill handling, you know, issues with the bike coming into Motor America. And man, I got to tell you, like, we took what we learned from those couple races we did leading into this first round. And I got to say, we came in hot, and we saw it right from the very, very first morning practice. He went out, and just like he said, he was faster than everybody. And man, the field has got to be one of the toughest fields that I've seen in Motor America ever. So for him to do this on this weekend with that kind of company was super impressive. And what was even more impressive was well, for the fact that one, Jeff May broke the track record with a 27 flat. I was like, wow, man, that is crazy fast. And then Travis turned right around and broke it with a 26.9 in the next race right after that. And so here we've got this bike that we're breaking track records with, and we're doing well in the races. And of course, I want to change something, you know, it's because of the stuff I saw in the data, and what I want to do was a pretty big change. And I kind of hit Travis up, and he was just like, well, let's do it. And we're again coming up on Superbike race 1. And I'm like, man, I just don't know, you know, I got nervous, and I'm like, let's just hold off. We'll wait till tomorrow. We'll test it in the morning warm up. So he's like, fine, great. Well, he went out and won the Superbike Cup race in Superbike. I was like, I'm glad we didn't try to change, you know, all is good. So long story short, we made the change to the bike for the morning session, and the conditions weren't good. I'm like, Travis, this is gonna be a good test, you know, keep the bike upright. There were some folks that crashed in that morning practice, good riders that crashed. I was like, ooh, the conditions aren't good.
No, we almost sat out of it too.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, he went out there and gave some really good drives off the corner. And he came back and he goes, oh my gosh, it's amazing. The drive grip and drive from the bike's amazing. So we went with it, you know, and then basically he ended up winning the next Stock 1000 race. And then in Superbike, he again broke the track record with a 26.6, I believe it was, Travis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this weekend was just, we're really looking forward to the next race. I mean, going to Virginia, it's one of his tracks, and he does well there. We're excited to go race and keep on racing, you know.
Yeah, with the momentum that you guys have going on, I mean, it looks very promising, and it's very exciting too to see, you know, what this platform is going to do, you know, with good racer and then good team out there trying to figure out how you could continue to get those first places, second places, you know, and it's amazing. Steve, I know that we've talked about this a little bit. I'm not sure if you guys, if you mentioned this or not, but in our previous conversation, you said that there's a little bit more that you could squeeze out of that bike to make it go a little bit faster. So is that the plan for this next race coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it's always the time showing up for a Motor America race, right? So yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I'm going to be working on from right out of the first practice. You know, I think we're going to have a good package going into that race right out of the bat, and it's what I can give Travis that makes him comfortable to push that little bit, you know, get us off the corner better and higher straightaway speeds. Everybody's always, oh, wow, the power of the BMW, it's so fast. You know, it's like, is it really that it's that fast? Or are we just putting a little bit better grip down to the ground? This new generation bike has a flex frame, has a swing arm that has a lot of torsional flex to it. And so it's such a big step up from what we've been racing in the past. And our BMWs were fast before, and this one's faster. You know, there's so much in this new bike. It's such an amazing package. And really, we just want to, you know, basically highlight and show everybody how good it really is.
Awesome. Travis, so going into your next race mentally, what are you preparing for? What is it that you are excited for? And yeah, take it away.
Preparation's the same. I'm still training. I'm riding my bicycles. I'm working a lot. Been working a lot more on the marketing side of things, trying to get sponsors and raise money so we continue at the level we're at. But really, I'm just looking forward to getting back out there. Weir is one of my favorite tracks. I've won there before. We won on the BMW in 2018. Awesome. And I think with how comfortable I felt pushing at essentially lap record pace at Road Atlanta, I think that, you know, with faith in Steve and my mechanic Alex Torres, that they're going to put a very similar package underneath me. And I'm looking forward to just getting out there and riding and having some fun. I mean, Atlanta was super fun. Physically, I felt great. And I feel like I'm in even better shape now after doing 4 races in 2 days. So I'm just looking forward to get back out there with the guys and showing what the BMW is capable of.
Awesome. That's great. So I know we've been here for a little bit. So in closing, guys, is there any other remarks that you guys like to let the audience know, or anything you guys want to chime in on, just to let them know? Take it away. The floor is yours.
Go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead, Travis.
No, I just want to thank you, Moses, for taking the time to do this for us. We appreciate the promotion, and I would have to thank BMW for giving me this opportunity for the last 4 years. I really didn't know how long this relationship would last, and I owe it all to Steve for having faith in me to ride the bike, because we've had a lot of ups and downs in our time together. And my mechanic Alex Torres, he's the man. He's the one that's working on my stuff. He doesn't even let Steve hardly touch the bike, so he's the only guy working on it.
No way.
Wow. I have a crew of 8 or 10 guys. He's like my lone ranger. He even helps me drive the rig to some of the races. So first of all, thanks to my team, my mom, my family, and big shout out to BMW for believing in me and giving me the equipment to go out there and win races. I mean, I was so emotional at Atlanta getting that victory. It wasn't my first one, but it felt like, the best one yet. And I hope we have some more success to come, honestly. I'm really looking forward to carrying this momentum into the next round.
Awesome. Well, Travis, Steve, we wish you the best in this 2021 season. Good luck on your next race. And remember, you have a target behind you. So just keep that target going, brother. We're here rooting for you, man.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are calling this a wrap, but we can't forget to thank those who made this video series possible. First, to Cross Country Cycles out of Metuchen, New Jersey, who have an amazing multi-level facility with all your motorcycle dreams. They also have a BMW exclusive facility in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. These are must-go-to shops when visiting the area. Irv Seaver BMW, located here in sunny Orange, California, with 2 showrooms and a soon-to-come one-stop shop for coffee, sweets, vintage BMW motorcycles, and an amazing race history. Irv Seaver BMW has been in business since 1911, so stop by and check them out. Until next time, make life a ride and keep the rubber side down.